My dispatcher called it a shortcut. My dashcam recorded it as the night I met true terror in Blackwood Forest. The groan of the air brakes was the only thing louder than the nagging in my own head. My rig, all 18 wheels and 40 tons of her, settled into the gravel of the rest stop with a heavy sigh. I killed the engine and the world went quiet, save for the hum of the reefer unit behind me and the chirping of crickets somewhere in the twilight. For a long moment I just sat there, knuckles white on the steering wheel, staring at the GPS on my phone. The blue line, my official route, snaked its way around the base of the mountain, a long, tedious 97 miles of asphalt. But then there was the other line, a thin, gray, almost invisible, dotted line that cut straight through the dark green blob labeled Blackwood National Forest. My dispatcher, Brenda, had called an hour ago, her voice a familiar mix of saccharine sweetness and steel. "Jake, honey, you know that load is time-sensitive. The bonus for getting it to the distribution center by 4 a.m. is significant." I didn't need the reminder. It was a hot load of specialty pharmaceuticals, and the bonus she was talking about would be enough to finally replace the transmission in my wife's car and give my daughter, Lily, the kind of 8th birthday party she'd been dreaming about for months. The kind with a bouncy castle and a real magician. Not just me fumbling with a deck of cards. Problem was, a jackknifed pickle truck on I-84 had put me 4 hours behind schedule. There was no way I'd make it by 4 a.m. using the official route. But the gray line, I'd heard whispers about it at truck stops for years. Ridge Road, an old logging trail that supposedly cut a good 2.5 hours off the mountain crossing. Most guys dismissed it as a myth or suicide for a rig my size. "Tears up your suspension," one old-timer had told me once, spitting tobacco juice into a styrofoam cup. "And that's if the trees don't tear up your trailer first. Place ain't right." I looked at the picture of Lily taped to my dashboard, her 2 front teeth missing in a goofy, 7-year-old grin. Her birthday party was tomorrow afternoon. If I made this delivery on time, I could deadhead back and be there to see her face when she saw the bouncy castle. If I was late, I'd miss it. Again. "Screw it," I muttered to the empty cab. I grabbed the lukewarm coffee from my cup holder, chugged the bitter remains, and fired up the engine. The decision felt like jumping off a cliff, a reckless, stupid gamble fueled by caffeine and desperation. But the thought of Lily's smile was all the push I needed. The turnoff was exactly where the old-timer said it would be, an unmarked, overgrown dirt path hidden behind a rusty, dilapidated gate that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Eisenhower administration. I had to get out and use a pair of bolt cutters from my toolbox to snap the ancient, corroded chain. As the gates creaked open, a wave of cool, damp air flowed out from the woods, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. It felt like opening a tomb. For the first 10 miles, it wasn't so bad. The road was gravel, wide enough for my rig, and the trees, mostly tall pines, kept a respectful distance. I was making good time, a cocky grin spreading across my face. I pictured myself rolling into the distribution center with time to spare, Brenda's surprise congratulations buzzing in my ear. But as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the mountains, the forest began to change. The pines gave way to gnarled, ancient hardwoods, their branches reaching over the road like skeletal fingers, blotting out the last of the evening light. The gravel disappeared, replaced by a packed dirt track that was quickly turning soft in the humid air. My tires sank slightly with every rotation, and the truck began to labor. My radio, which had been playing a staticky classic rock station, died with a sudden hiss. Just silence. I tried my phone. No service. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. The feeling of being smart and clever was rapidly being replaced by the cold, hard reality of being a guy in a very big, very slow-moving metal box, alone in the middle of nowhere. That's when I saw the first one. It was just a flicker of movement at the edge of my high beams, maybe 100 yards up the road. I slowed down, squinting. A deer, I thought, but it was too tall, too thin. It moved with a weird, jerky gait before disappearing into the thicket of trees. I shook my head, blaming fatigue. My eyes were playing tricks on me. It was probably just an odd-looking buck. I kept driving, my hands gripping the wheel a little tighter. The road got narrower. Branches, thick as my arm, scraped and screeched along the side of my trailer, the sound like fingernails on a giant chalkboard. I had to slow to a crawl, my eyes darting between the road ahead and my side mirrors. The woods were unnervingly dark, a solid wall of blackness on either side of the tunnel my headlights bored through the night. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. It was a primal, gut-level certainty that I was not alone out here, and whatever was with me was not friendly. I glanced at the little red light on my dashcam. It was always on, a silent, impartial witness to my long, lonely hours on the road. It recorded on a continuous loop, saving footage only if I hit the manual button or if the accelerometer detected a sudden jolt, like an accident. The thought was vaguely comforting. If something happened, at least there'd be a record. I was navigating a particularly tight bend, the front of my cab nearly brushing the trees on one side, while the back of my trailer threatened to slide into a ditch on the other, when a loud metallic bang erupted from the passenger side of my trailer. It wasn't the screech of a branch. This was a solid, violent impact, like someone had swung a sledgehammer against the aluminum skin. My heart leaped into my throat. I slammed on the brakes, and the whole rig shuddered to a halt with a deafening squeal. The engine idled, a low rumble in the suffocating silence that followed. Every nerve in my body was screaming. I flicked on every exterior light I had, flooding the small clearing around me in a brilliant white glare. My eyes shot to the passenger side mirror. Nothing. Just the side of my trailer gleaming in the light and the impenetrable wall of trees behind it. No animal, no person. Nothing. My breath hitched in my chest. Did a branch fall? No, the sound was wrong. It came from the side, not the top. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, frozen, listening. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the thumping of my heart against my ribs. My hand hovered over the door handle. I should get out. I should check for damage. But I couldn't. I was pinned to my seat by a kind of fear I'd never known before, a deep, instinctual terror that told me getting out of the cab would be the last thing I ever did. "Okay, Jake, get a grip," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Just drive. Just get out of here." I took a deep, shaky breath, shifted the truck into gear, and slowly took my foot off the brake. The rig lurched forward. My headlights swept across the narrow dirt road as I straightened out of the turn, and then they illuminated what was standing in the middle of the road, not 50 feet in front of me. I hit the brakes so hard my seatbelt locked, throwing me forward. It was tall, impossibly so, and stick-thin, like a collection of branches twisted into a vaguely human shape. Its limbs were too long, its joints bent at angles that were just wrong. It was perfectly still, its featureless head tilted slightly as if it were listening. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a person. It was something my mind had no category for, something that shouldn't exist. We stared at each other for a silent, terrifying second, my truck's engine the only sound in the world. The little red light on my dashcam glowed faithfully on the dashboard, recording everything. Then with a slow, deliberate motion that sent a wave of ice through my veins, the thing turned its head to look directly at me. The movement was accompanied by a dry, clicking sound, like dead branches snapping in a fire. The clicking sound drilled into my skull, a sound so alien and yet so organic it made the hair on my arms stand straight up. The thing didn't have eyes, not that I could see. Its head was a smooth, oblong shape, like a water-worn stone, but I knew, it was looking at me. It saw past the glass and steel, past the glare of the headlights, and right into the terrified animal part of my brain that was screaming one single primal word. Wrong. My hand, slick with sweat, fumbled for the air horn. It was a purely instinctual move, the trucker's equivalent of a scream. I yanked the cord, and the world exploded with a deafening blast that vibrated through the floorboards and up my spine. The sound tore through the silence of the woods, a desperate, man-made roar of defiance. Any normal animal, a bear, a mountain lion, even a moose would have bolted. This thing didn't. It tilted its head further, the clicking sound intensifying, faster now, like a Geiger counter nearing a radiation source. It took a step towards me. The movement was a nightmarish parody of walking. Its long, spindly leg unfolded from a joint in the middle of its shin, planting a three-toed foot on the dirt with a soft thud. It was a fluid, insect-like motion that defied all biology I understood. "No. No way," I breathed, my voice a strangled whisper. I threw the truck into reverse, my mind finally kicking into gear past the sheer panic. The transmission groaned in protest. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't run it over. The thought of the impact of that thing crunching under my wheels was somehow more terrifying than facing it. My only option was to back away, to retreat the way I came. The rig lurched backwards, tires spinning in the soft dirt for a terrifying second before they found purchase. I kept my eyes glued to the thing in the road, which had started moving again, matching my slow, backward pace. It didn't run. It just walked, its impossibly long strides eating up the ground, keeping the distance between us exactly the same. 50 feet. Always 50 feet. Sweat poured down my face, stinging my eyes. Backing up a 53-foot trailer on a straight, paved road is a skill. Backing it up on a narrow, winding dirt track in total darkness with a monster from my nightmares keeping pace was a special kind of hell. Branches I hadn't even noticed on the way in were now claws, grabbing and screeching at the trailer. I could feel it wanting to pivot, to jackknife and trap me here for good. My arms ached from wrestling the wheel, my neck raw from craning to see my mirrors, my eyes darting between the passenger side, the driver's side, and the road ahead through the windshield, which was now my rear view. And in the windshield it was always there. A tall, dark silhouette against the trees, loping along with that horrifyingly graceful, broken-legged gait. The clicking sound was a constant companion, a faint, maddening rhythm just at the edge of hearing. Then I saw another one. It was just for a second, a flash of movement in my driver's side mirror. As my light swung past a thicket of birch trees, they illuminated a second figure. It was identical to the first, standing half hidden behind a pale trunk, its long head turned to watch me pass. My blood ran cold. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just one. I was being flanked. I risked a glance at my dashcam. The little red light was still on. A tiny, stupid part of my brain felt a sliver of relief. They'll find the footage, it thought. They'll know what happened. The rest of my brain was screaming that it wouldn't matter, that knowing wouldn't bring me back from whatever these things had planned. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The diesel engine roared, but my speed was pathetic. The trailer fishtailed, and I had to correct hard, the sickening sensation of losing control making my stomach clench. I sideswiped a massive oak tree, the impact shuddering through the entire rig, with a sound like a thunderclap. The mirror on my passenger side shattered, sending a spiderweb of cracks across the glass, but it held in its frame. Now my view on that side was a fractured, distorted mess. Through the broken glass, I could see more of them. They were flitting between the trees, keeping pace. Not 2, maybe 5, 6. They were like shadows, impossibly fast and silent, their jerky movements making them hard to track. They were herding me. I wasn't just being chased, I was being funneled. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This road wasn't just a shortcut. It was a trap, and I had driven right into the center of it. Panic gave way to a cold, razor-sharp dread. I had to get out. I had to get back to that rusty gate, back to the world of asphalt and streetlights and other human beings. I focused everything I had on driving, on keeping the trailer straight, on pushing my rig as fast as it would go in reverse. The first creature was still behind me, or in front of me, technically a relentless pacer setting the tempo for this nightmare parade. I backed around a sharp bend, my headlights sweeping across the path, and my heart stopped. The road was blocked. A massive pine tree, at least 4 feet in diameter, lay across the entire width of the track. It wasn't an old deadfall. The break in the trunk was fresh, splintered wood showing pale against the dark bark. It hadn't been there on my way in. I knew that with absolute certainty. They had done this. While one of them had distracted me, the others had worked behind me, sealing my only escape route. I slammed on the brakes, the tires locking and skidding the last few feet until my rear bumper was inches from the massive trunk. The engine sputtered, choked, and died, and then there was silence. A thick, heavy, expectant silence. I fumbled with the ignition, my hand shaking so violently I could barely fit the key in the slot. Come on, start, you son of a bitch!" I begged the machine. The engine turned over, coughed once, twice, and then caught with a roar. Thank God. But I was trapped, boxed in. The tree behind me, and the creature, the original creature, was now slowly, deliberately, walking towards the front of my truck. Its escort party was emerging from the woods on both sides, their tall skeletal frames stepping out of the shadows and into the glare of my lights. They moved without haste, their clicking growing into a chorus, a dissonant, chittering symphony that sounded like 1,000 insects chewing on bone. They were surrounding the cab. I locked the doors, a laughably futile gesture. My eyes darted around, looking for any way out, any hope at all. There was none. One of the figures approached the driver's side. It was so close now I could see the texture of its skin. It looked like stretched, dried bark, mottled with patches of what looked like moss. It bent down, its too long neck hinging at an impossible angle, until its featureless head was level with my window. A long twig-like arm unfolded, reaching for the cab. 5 impossibly long jointed fingers, more like spider legs than anything else, splayed out. A dry, rasping sound scraped against the glass, right next to my head. Then, with a soft, deliberate tap, one of the spindly fingers pressed against the window, right in front of my face. The clicking sound wasn't in the woods anymore. It was inside my head, and through the glass I could hear a new sound. A low, guttural whisper that wasn't a voice, but felt like one, shaping a single, terrifying question in my mind. "What are you?" The question echoed not in my ears, but in the deepest recesses of my mind. It wasn't a sound, it was a thought, an invasive presence that felt cold and sharp, like a sliver of ice being pushed into my brain. "What are you?" My own thoughts scattered like mice. I couldn't form a response, couldn't even process the alien intimacy of the contact. All I could do was stare at the thing outside my window, at the long, multi-jointed finger pressed against the glass, its tip no more than 2 inches from my cheek. The finger began to vibrate. A low, resonant hum started to build, traveling through the glass, through the air, and into the bones of my skull. The truck cab, my steel sanctuary, suddenly felt like a tin can. The humming grew louder, harmonizing with the clicking chorus from the others, creating a disorienting, nauseating drone that made the world swim before my eyes. My vision blurred. The dashboard lights seemed to pulse in time with the sound. Another tap. This one came from the passenger side window. I ripped my gaze away from the creature beside me and saw another one, a mirror image, its own grotesque hand pressed against the opposite window. A third one was at the windshield, its shadowy form blotting out what little I could see of the road ahead. They were examining me, probing. My rig wasn't just a box they couldn't get into. It was a container, and I was the specimen inside. Anger, hot and blinding, surged through the terror. It was a primal, cornered animal rage. I wasn't just going to sit here and let them do whatever it was they were doing. I was a husband, a father. I was a 30-year veteran of the road, and this was my goddamn truck. With a roar that was more animal than human, I yanked the air horn cord again. The blast contained within the cacophony of their humming was less effective this time, but the sheer vibration seemed to startle the one at my window. It recoiled slightly, its finger leaving the glass. It was a small victory, but it was enough. My mind raced, desperately searching for a weapon, an advantage. My eyes fell on the control panel for my headlights. High beams. Light. They came from the darkness. Maybe they hated the light. It was a long shot, the kind of logic you see in a bad horror movie. But it was all I had. I slammed my hand down on the switch for the roof-mounted floodlights, the kind designed to illuminate a whole work site. An actinic, blue-white glare erupted from the top of my cab, turning night into an artificial noon. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The creatures shrieked. It wasn't a sound made with lungs or a voice box. It was a high-frequency psychic scream that lanced through my head, 1,000 times worse than the question. It was pure, undiluted agony. My own scream was lost in the mental onslaught. They scrambled back, their impossibly fast movements now clumsy and panicked. They shielded their featureless heads with their long, spindly arms, their thin bodies contorting as if the light were a physical blow. They retreated from the truck, melting back into the shadows just beyond the full glare of the floodlights, their chittering now pitched with pain and rage. The one that had been at my window paused at the edge of the light, half hidden behind a tree. It turned its head, and even though it had no eyes, I felt its hatred, its malevolence, like a physical force. Then it was gone, swallowed by the forest. I didn't wait. My foot stomped on the accelerator. The engine screamed, but I wasn't in reverse anymore. I'd slammed the shifter into first gear. The fallen pine tree was behind me. In front of me there was only the narrow dirt road and whatever lay deeper in the woods. Reversing was no longer an option. The only way out was forward. The rig shot forward, mud and gravel flying from under the tires. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles bone white, my entire body trembling with adrenaline. The forest was a blur on either side. I didn't care about the branches anymore. I welcomed the screeching and scraping. It was the sound of escape. The road was a treacherous, twisting ribbon of dirt, and I was taking the turns way too fast, the trailer groaning and swaying behind me, threatening to tip with every correction of the wheel. I glanced at the GPS on my phone. The screen was still black. No service. I had no idea where I was. No idea how much further this cursed road went on. All I knew was that I had to keep moving. To stop was to die. I drove like a madman for what felt like an hour, though it was probably only 15 minutes. The terrain started to change. The trees thinned out slightly, and the road began a steep, winding incline. The truck labored, the engine whining as it fought against gravity. I had to downshift, my speed dropping to a punishing crawl. The fear came flooding back. Moving this slowly, I was a sitting duck. My eyes scanned the tree line, searching for any sign of movement. The woods were dark and silent again, but the silence was no longer peaceful. It was menacing. It was the silence of a predator waiting for its prey to exhaust itself. And then I saw it. Up ahead, around a sharp bend, a light. It wasn't the steady, white light of a house. It was a flickering, warm, orange glow, like a bonfire. Hope, fragile but fierce, flared in my chest. A campfire. People. Maybe loggers or campers who were even more lost than I was. Civilization. Safety. I pushed the truck harder, urging it up the last few feet of the incline. As I rounded the bend, the source of the light came into view, and the hope in my chest died, replaced by a cold, heavy stone of dread. It wasn't a campfire. In the middle of a small natural clearing just off the road, a fire was burning, but it wasn't wood that was on fire. The flames were licking at the twisted, mangled wreckage of a vehicle. From the shape of the buckled frame and the single rear axle, I recognized it immediately. It was a smaller truck, a box truck, like for local deliveries. Its sides were peeled back like a sardine can, and the cargo, what was left of it, was scattered around the burning chassis. And surrounding the fire, standing in a wide circle with their backs to the flames, were the creatures. At least a dozen of them. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, motionless as statues, their long skeletal forms silhouetted against the inferno. It looked like some kind of ritual, a grim, silent vigil. They were bathed in the flickering orange light, and for the first time I could see details I hadn't before. I could see the strange, runic-looking patterns that seemed to be carved into their bark-like skin. I should have kept going. I should have driven right past, stayed in the relative safety of my cab, and prayed they didn't notice me. But my eyes were drawn to something on the ground near the edge of the road, just outside the circle of creatures. It was half hidden in the shadows, but it glinted in the firelight. It was a Dashcam. It had been ripped from its mount, the wires torn, the plastic casing cracked. But it was lying there, on the dirt, its lens pointed directly at the horrifying scene. It was a mirror image of the one on my own dashboard. A record, a witness, Maybe the only evidence of what happened to the poor soul who drove that truck. I don't know what came over me. It wasn't bravery. It was a kind of desperate, irrational compulsion. That little black box contained a truth that the world needed to see. It held the story of a driver who hadn't been as lucky as I had been so far. Lily's face flashed in my mind, her goofy, toothless grin. I thought about her growing up, never knowing what happened to her dad out here in the woods. And I thought about the family of whoever drove that box truck. They deserved to know. I slowed the rig to a rolling stop, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. The creatures around the fire didn't move, didn't seem to notice me. Their attention was completely fixed on the burning wreck. My hand was on the door handle. It was the stupidest, most insane idea I have ever had in my entire life. I cracked the door open, the faint click sounding like a gunshot in the night. I held my breath. Still no reaction from the figures by the fire. I could do this. Just open the door, lean out, grab it, and go. A 10-second operation. I swung the door open, the cab light flashing on. I lunged for it, my fingers stretching, closing around the cool plastic of the dashcam. I had it, but as my fingers closed around it, the one closest to me, the one at the edge of the circle, stopped. Its head slowly, mechanically, turned away from the fire. It swiveled on its long neck, the clicking sound starting up again, soft and low, and its featureless face turned directly towards my open cab door. For a heartbeat the world stopped. Me, leaning halfway out of my truck, fingers clenched around the cracked plastic of the dashcam. The creature, 100 feet away, its eyeless face locked onto me. The fire crackled, casting our shadows long and dancing. The psychic hum started again, a single, sharp note of discovery that lanced through my skull. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, all 12 of them turned in unison. The silent vigil was over. The hunt was on again. There was no time to think. I threw myself back into the cab, slamming the heavy door shut just as the first creature began to move. I didn't even bother to put the stolen dashcam down. I just tossed it onto the passenger seat and jammed the truck into gear. My foot flattened the accelerator to the floor. The engine bellowed in protest, black smoke belching from the stacks, and 40 tons of steel and rubber clawed at the dirt road, fighting for traction. They were fast, frighteningly fast. Before my rig had even reached 10 miles an hour, 2 of them were alongside the cab, their twig-like fingers scraping, searching for a purchase on the slick metal. A sound like claws on a chalkboard screeched from the roof, and I knew one of them had managed to climb on top. My entire world narrowed to the dirt track illuminated by my headlights and the horrifying sounds of the things trying to tear my truck apart around me. A heavy, rhythmic thump, thump, thump began to reverberate through the cab from above. It was trying to smash its way through the roof. Dents started appearing in the ceiling panel above my head, each one accompanied by a shower of dust and paint flakes. Another one appeared at my window, its bark-like face pressed to the glass, its hands clawing at the seals. I swerved hard, clipping a thick pine tree with the passenger side. The impact sent a violent shudder through the frame, and was enough to dislodge the creature at the window, sending it tumbling into the darkness. But the one on the roof held on. Thump. Crack. A jagged tear appeared in the ceiling, and the tip of a spindly, dark limb poked through. It was over. It was going to peel the roof back and pull me out. Panic gave way to a strange, cold calm. I wasn't going to die cowering in my seat. My eyes darted around the cab, searching for anything. My gaze landed on the heavy, steel-barreled tire thumper I kept wedged next to my seat. Without a second thought, I grabbed it. The creature's arm was now through the ceiling up to its elbow joint, blindly groping in the air. I stood up on the seat as best I could, braced myself against the bucking of the truck, and swung the iron bar with all the strength I had. The impact was met with a sickening wet crunch, like snapping a bundle of dry sticks. A psychic shriek of pure agony exploded in my head, 100 times more powerful than before. It was so intense I blacked out for a second, my vision swimming in static. The arm retracted from the hole, and I heard a heavy thud as the creature fell from the roof onto the road behind me. I risked a glance in my side mirror and saw it writhing on the ground, its arm bent at an unnatural angle. The others who had been chasing me stopped and gathered around their injured compatriot. I had hurt one of them, and in doing so, I had bought myself a few precious seconds. I didn't waste them. I pushed the engine as hard as it would go, flying down the mountain path with reckless abandon. Every scrape of a branch, every bump in the road sent a fresh jolt of terror through me, but I didn't see them again. The road began to level out, the trees thinning more and more, and then I saw it. A sight more beautiful than any sunrise I had ever witnessed. The dull, gray sheen of worn asphalt. I hit the paved road with a jarring bounce that rattled my teeth, but I didn't slow down. I pushed on, my eyes scanning for a highway sign, a landmark, anything. A few minutes later, I passed a green sign with reflective white letters. I-84 East, 2 miles. I almost wept with relief. I was out. I made it to the distribution center at 3:47 a.m. The security guard at the gate gave me a funny look, his eyes lingering on the shattered mirror, the deep scrapes along the trailer, and the gaping, jagged hole in the roof of my cab. "Rough night?" he asked, chewing on a toothpick. "You have no idea," I managed to croak, my voice raw. I dropped the trailer, collected my paperwork, and drove my battered rig to the nearest all-night truck stop. I didn't even back into a spot properly. I just pulled in, killed the engine, and sat there shaking as the sun began to cast a pale gray light across the eastern sky. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a trembling that I couldn't control. My eyes fell on the 2 Dashcams sitting on the passenger seat. My own, its little red light now off, and the cracked one I'd stolen from the woods. My hand was shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to eject the memory card from my camera. I did the same with the other one, carefully prying the tiny card from the damaged casing. I tucked both of them securely into my wallet. The footage was the only thing that made any of it real, the only proof that I hadn't lost my mind. I called Brenda. Her voice was chipper. "Jake, honey, you made it. I knew you could do it. That bonus is all yours." "Brenda," I said, my voice flat. "Dead." I quit. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Jake, what are you talking about? Are you okay?" "I'm done. I'm selling my rig. I'm going home." I looked at the picture of Lily on my dashboard. Her smile was the only thing that felt real in the entire world. I'm not missing her birthday party. And I didn't. I got a ride home, walked through my front door looking like I'd been through a war, and swept my daughter up in a hug that lasted for 5 solid minutes. The bouncy castle was magnificent. The magician was mediocre, but Lily's laughter was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The next day, I contacted a journalist I found online, someone who specialized in paranormal stories and unexplained phenomena, not some crackpot, but a serious investigator. We met in a quiet coffee shop. I pushed the 2 small memory cards across the table. "I don't want money," I told him. "I don't want my name used. I just want people to know. I want the family of that other driver to have some kind of answer, even if it's one they'll never believe." He was skeptical, of course, until he watched the footage. I watched his face as he saw what I saw. The color drained from his cheeks. His professional composure crumbled, replaced by a wide-eyed, slack-jawed awe. He watched my footage first, the creature in the road, the swarm, the attack on my cab. Then he watched the footage from the other camera. It was shorter and far more grim. It showed the box truck turning onto Ridge Road, the driver whistling. It showed the first creature stepping out. It showed the truck stopping, then being swarmed from all sides. The footage cut out abruptly with the sound of shattering glass and a human scream. The story was published a month later on a major news outlet's website, buried in their Unexplained Files section. It was titled The Blackwood Forest Incident, and it used stills from the videos. The images were blurry, distorted by motion and low light, but they were clear enough. The story went viral for about a week. It was debated endlessly on forums and Reddit threads. Most people called it a brilliant hoax, a masterful work of CGI. Government officials issued a statement claiming the fallen tree was caused by a localized microburst, and the figures were a known optical illusion caused by swamp gas and headlights, a phenomenon they called the Ridge Road refraction. They closed Ridge Road permanently, citing geological instability. They can call it whatever they want. I know what I saw. I sold my rig and got a local dispatch job. I'm home every night now. I tuck my daughter into bed and I read her stories, though I skip the ones about monsters in the woods. Sometimes on quiet nights, when the wind rustles the leaves outside my window, I hear a faint clicking sound. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see a tall, slender figure standing in the dark, its head tilted, asking a question I can never answer. I have the bonus money, and my wife has a new transmission, but I left a part of myself on that mountain. A part of me will be driving that haunted road forever, pursued by things that have no name, witnessed only by the steady, glowing red light of a Dashcam.